Hello, man. Hello, Mgtows. I wanted to talk a little bit today about the barbarism of family segregation laws, and we can shut that off now. We got a sound check. We can look at the barbarism of family segregation laws, and I do say family segregation laws because it's gender bias segregation, which falls legally under the pretenses and law of you know, any kind of bigotry. Um, so we take a look at what happens to men in the family system, and the children get removed of men in the family system, and that's been happening for pretty close to a century now. It used to be men got the children simply because they were the homeowners, and everything's flip flop. But for a full century now, men get their children separated from them, and that's one of the things that they have to deal with in divorce. In divorce court, our whole system is geared to that. Today, I read an article. It was called from the Atlantic, and it was called "Trumpism Realized," and it said that to preserve the political culture, the predominance of white America against the tide of demographic change, the administration had to settle on policies of what they call systematic child abuse. But the same systematic child abuse happens to men every day, and in America, men are separated from their child, and for the purpose of this podcast, I'm going to change some of the words in it so you can see the difference. It says at least 2,000 children have been forcibly separated from parents by the United States government. And you can change those words to at least 200 million children over the last decade have been forcibly separated from their parents by the United States government. Their stories are wrenching. It's always wrenching in divorce. Same as migrant separation. It's the same laws working in the same way. And let's clarify this. When you march a child over a desert or through in a system of total poverty and bring them to the United States, the child care system here takes the child and removes it from you because you have been neglectful, and you have been a bad parent because of the act that you've done. You brought it into this. Neglectful atmosphere. You don't have a home. You don't have nothing. You're coming to America, but in essence, when we men have children, we bring these children into a situation where we have to drag them across a desert of education, of learning, of life experience. So it's a perceived event that men have pre sort of child abuse. There was pre-child abuse involved in having a child, but the women in gynocentrism get separated from that. They just have the children. The children was inflicted on them in the sense of what the government thinks about males and what the government thinks about females. So it's gender segregation is what it is. Men don't get the children, women get the children, in the same sense as the children are taken from migrant families because they pre-abused their children before they got here, and that's why they're taken. It's not because some arbitrary system says that there's real reasons for these people. Think about this thing. But this is the system that's in America. If you're thinking about bringing your children to America, we already have a system set up that pre-abuses. Yes, they abuse children in the system. They say some custody cases have been deported. In some cases, parents have been deported while their children were still in custody. Yes, this happens. In some cases, men get deported from the family while the children are still in custody of the man, the woman. You start changing the words a little bit, and you start seeing the idea of what gynocentrism is and what men have been talking about, what men's rights people have been talking about, what men's rights people like you and me have been talking about. Is it creates thousands of immigrant orphans, thousands. Hell, it creates millions of immigrants orphans. The same program of divorce, the same program of family courts creates just millions a year of children, of fatherless children, pretty much orphan children that the government has to take care of. So we go on. They say the White House Chief of Staff, John Kelly, blithely assured NPR, this is coming out of NPR and The Atlantic, the administration's main focus is not the welfare of the children. Exactly like in the divorce court, the main focus is not the welfare of the children as much as it is which breaking up families at the essence of the family core. They're breaking up families at the essence of the family. It's a tough deterrent. What are they deterring? They're deterring family living because America is getting too big. In their concept, America is getting too big. We have to deter people from having families. The crisis they say the crisis extends from one exists in the administration's own, the people fleeing to the U.S. border. You're bringing your kids, you're fleeing to the U.S. border, you're committing child abuse while you're doing that. The kids are separated from their family, just like the laws for you or I or anybody in this United States. The family laws don't change. They're the same. There's no amnesty given. And that's what they're talking about when they talk. There's no amnesty given to these families that get separated at the border. That's why they use the word amnesty. Now, there's no amnesty giving to men either, that men get separated from their children of divorce. There is never no amnesty giving in this. There goes Dougie again. He has some irreparable harm to his brain. The policy of cruelty is purposeful, they say. Yes, the policy of cruelty is purposeful. By inflicting irreparable trauma on the child and the family, the administration intends to persuade those from looking to America for a better life to stay at home. The barbarism is deliberately inflicted suffering on children as coercion, and hence the same laws apply to men in this country. The barbarism is inflicted intentionally on men. The barbarism is deliberately inflicted and suffering onto the children and the families because they want to what? They want to do what? They want to deliberately to make sure that these families do not have any more families. They don't need any more families. They don't want any more families, and they're breaking up. This is an intentional attack on the families through divorce and the family court system. The same way it goes as for the immigrants is the same way it goes for men, and in separating families at the borders. There is no difference between the two, and the two styles. There is no difference between theirs. The administration says not so. It's defending against the media, the policing both real and non-real press is what they're calling it. He says this uproar is hilarious because no, we can't say this now because we can see sarcastically that it is humane, and we can see that there is a correlation between family courts in America and how we deal with families and the way how we deal with families at our borders. The administration will surely deny this thing, and that's how it goes. Boy, is he going nuts out there. Wow. And so Sessions had a conversation on a radio host with Hugh Hewitt, and he measured the questions routinely, sort of routinely in this. And every time someone gets prosecuted in American crime, American citizens, and they go to jail, they're separated from their families. That's what he said. So Sessions himself and Miller said, yeah, potentially these tools are used against families in other ways too. And then the whole thing unfolds to you about men's rights and what we're saying. And for close to a century and a decade, these same policies come to affect us in this. They say at the heart of Trumpism is both cruelty and denial, but in the heart of Trump didn't create these laws. These laws were passed down to him. These laws were already existing, and it wasn't Obama, and it wasn't Bill Clinton, and it wasn't George Bush, and it wasn't Ronald Reagan. These laws exist from probably the turn of the early century, which goes back to other other administrations, and this is a slow turning process in here of lawyers through this whole century of removing children from men. And we can see how these parallels shattered families, and this is a catastrophe of human rights on a monumental proportion. We dehumanize men just like we dehumanize immigrants. We dehumanize men just like we do. They're only working. What do they want immigrants here for? Well, most of the administration, I think all of the administrations, including Obama, will tell you we want cheap labor. And that's what they want from men too. They want cheap labor, and that's what they want. Whatever benefits the country is what they want. And they're not getting cheap labor from the Muslims. They're not getting cheap labor from Canada. They're not getting cheap labor from everywhere else. Who do they take that from? Well, they're going to take it from their citizens and people that want to be immigrants, but they don't want the family responsible. They don't want to be responsible for the families that come in these cases. And pretty much the big complaint about baby mamas and all that is the government doesn't want to be responsible for families, but in the same breath they are taking these steps to make sure in family courts and that we have 70% baby mamas out there. We have men separated from their children, and men have to go through the same thing every single day. It's cruel, it's barbaric, and it denies human rights as the immigrants. And that's what we've been saying. It's cruel and it's barbaric for the last century now, or at least half a century, since the 50s or 60s. When this thing first started, the men's rights first started saying, hey, there's something wrong with this system. The system of capitalism is a little out of control, and there's something wrong, and nobody wants to listen to us, but they'll listen to female rights. They'll listen to female rights activists, which we call feminists. They'll listen to people like that. They're saying the same thing. There's something wrong with this system, and we want it more because we're benefiting from these things. So when we look at articles like came out in the Atlantic today about and blaming it on Trump, and there's definitely, you just change a few words in these things, and you just use the word men instead of immigrants, and you use the word you keep their language, and you heart-wrenching stories that alter communities and stuff like that hyperbolic language that they use, and you think about what's been going on to men for close to a century now. And yeah, it'll start making sense to you about why the divorce system, why the family court system needs to be ripped down, torn apart, and burned down. And we need to stomp on those ashes to make sure they never arise again, because that's a system of slavery. It's a system that bases itself on cruelty and child suffering. And they'll say, oh, and it's all about the children. No, it's not. Yeah, it's all about the children. It is, because the government's doing what's in their best interest. They're hijacking the children in these cases. And think about the immigrant children. Think about what happens in those situations. Most of the people will end up getting exported, because we'll use the right language, to back to Mexico. The children stay here. They go into the family court system. They get foster families and everything, and that promotes a whole system of business for these lighter than air jobs that we call the government. So we don't want to lay off the government workers. We want to just have the children, and we've seen this with the Indian nation too. I can't remember the governor. I think it was not Sarah, but the other one that ran for president was called out on her bullshit when she had 33 children that was she getting foster care from, over $1 million and some dollars in foster care money, and she was using that for her campaign money. The Indian reservation children have often been hijacked, and they come in and they say, oh, you aren't good parents. They take the children. Why do they take the children? Because these children are the same they need these children for the same reason mothers need the children. Mothers have to have the children so they get the welfare benefit. Now the government has to have the children so it gets the loans and the grants, and they write against things, and they make millions and billions and trillions of dollars over the last few years on these things, and they're running a huge business of taking children. And that's not just from immigrants that are coming over the border. No, no, no. It's from men's children. It's women's children. It's your children. They want to take those children. They first step is to get them into the Health and Human Services program, where they have them halfway and you get a slave as a male. So this system is not unbiased in a way to immigrant people. It's the same for immigrant people it is for men in America. And get used to it, because I don't see it changing anytime soon unless people start waking up and replace a few words, the pronouns that Jordan Peterson seems to take offense to. It's one of the pronouns that we need to change is in the Health and Human Services books and in the government manuals and all the policy manuals and the law, is we need to insert men as fathers, not payee, and not slave, and not the spouse of the woman that's getting is the payor, or you're the payee. We're the payor. Jesus, but all these things, let me go back because I'm about done with this article here. Family segregation. Let me bring that up. And yeah, we can look at all these things. We can look at these articles, and then it's no surprise to me. And that's what I'm saying. If it's a surprise to these people that removing immigrant children at the border was new news. Hey, we've been doing that forever in America, and it's family segregation, it's gender bias segregation in the laws of our land. When you talk about segregation and biases and bigotry and all that stuff, gender is in there. Gender dynamics is in there and covered. When you take the children biasly away from the father, so you get a slave and you get a worker and you get someone to reduce the cost of your welfare. Yeah, that's barbarism. Barbarism. That's and that's all we've been saying for the last 30, 40 years here in the men's rights thing. But suddenly some moron in the press sees it at the border, and now it's a huge issue because somehow they can't put the issue together. Them are the same laws. The same laws apply to you in America. A matter of fact, those laws do apply to you in America because you're an American, and you've been living under those laws for the last half a century at least. But somehow nationalism, patriotism, I got to do my part and I got to man up bullshit trumps those laws. And that's no pun. Trump those laws and everything. But yeah, it's easy. It's an easy crossover in your mind when you start thinking about it this way. So go take a look at one of those family segregation at the border laws and children living in cages and stuff like that. And yeah, well, we have perfect examples of the Grandells up there in Sandusky, Ohio, which had 12 children living in cages. They were all foster children. That's not uncommon to have overcrowded foster children houses. What are you people, stupid? And that's what I asked the press. But they're so willing to go to bat for immigrant families at the border, but never willing to go to the bat for the male of our society, never willing to drop that gynocentrism until they can put away their biasness, their bigotry, their gynocentrism. They will never, ever be able to see the issues that us men's rights activists and us MGTOWs and us men see. Until they're able to put those biases and bigotry away, it's never going to happen. But they can see it at the immigrations at the border, which just blows my mind. Maybe it's excremented in a way. Maybe it's ballooned up in a way. And maybe this is a good thing for men, because I have been noticing a little change lately and the consciousness of blue pill men when they see gynocentrism. And maybe it's just because for the last 15 years, guys like me have been yapping on about it forever. But the fact remains the same as we got a barbaric family court systems. We need to tear those things down by force if necessary, and achieve a better system of law in this country. But they don't seem to want to do that because it benefits these 22 million these 22 million workers, and I talked about that yesterday, that work for the United States government in these jobs. So the United States government has simply become a jobs program. You don't need 22 million. But these are the programs which you need them for. These programs of family services. Well, yeah, we can start by eliminating the program of Health and Human Services, tailor it back to where it was with general relief for people in poverty, take out all those gender words in there, put in a person in every single one of those, and it will cost you about you, the taxpayer, and then start laying off all these 22 million people. We can lay off from the bottom, say, hey, go find a job in the private sector because, hey, everything's booming now. But they won't do that. There's idiocracy in our laws. And once you realize that it's pure bureaucracy and corruption, well, yeah, and you're going to have to pay for it. Well, it only seems like in the movie Robin Hood, it only seems when the sheriff started taking road taxes, which we have road taxes, and violently committing acts because he got so desperate for his money. He started committing acts of violence. The people see these things. They seem to have a barrier against logic until it comes and smacks them in the face. But it's the same program they had of feudalism back there, and our whole system is changing to a system of feudalism, and we're going to have more sheriffs of Nottinghams, and then pretty soon you're not even. They'll just remove your baby at the crib and just take it. Oh, there's a more deserving family over here, and then you get to pay for it because you're an ass. They'll tell you. Yeah, that's where that thing's going, but it might take a little time. But are you willing to sit there and you willing to sit here for the next 20, 30 years and watch this unfold in front of your face? Or are you going to join this? Are you going to join Mgtow and join the Men's Rights League and stop this? Because we have seen it before. Sometimes the idiocracy of America just confounds me. But the point of this whole thing is, it's no different for men in America than it is for those migrant workers. We get our children taken away at the drop of a dime, of a whim of a female. She's not happy. They take your children away. She can go get new dick, and you get to pay a servitude fine because you're the new slave. Well, what we're talking about is work. No one says that. No, you will be demanded to work 2 jobs. Then you will be demanded to work like an immigrant, and that's the way your government sees you. All they see them as is workers. That's what NAFTA was about. Come and get low-paying workers. Come to America and be a low-paid worker and get your children taken away from you because you're an abusive parent. That's what they're saying. We'll have better people raise them. And Health and Human Services, and then they'll get $16, $20, $24, $26, $30,000 a year to raise the children that you wouldn't give the immigrant. And the hypocrisy of that, they're going to give the children the foster cares, pay them $17,000 to $30,000 a year, and they wouldn't give it to the original American. The hypocrisy in that. because most of the family problems I see would be solved by raising them up above poverty. So they'll take children for poverty. They'll take $17,000 to $30,000, give it to an undeserving family to raise that children, and they wouldn't give it to the original family to try to preserve that family. That's hypocrisy and bureaucracy in the works. But we got child shops now, prison centers, and the prisons are making the money off of it, and they got that shit down. They want that $30,000 for each child that you wouldn't give to that you were so they're brown people or the poor people or you got some excuse. And we talked about this yesterday, and all of America's all confused about this thing, and then the prison industry ends up with the money. Yeah, who runs the prison industry? Donald Trump can look right and look left, and one of those people will be gathering money from them. Oh, the special people, the special people in America, the entitled, the billionaires. Well, yeah, they do what they do, and they do what they've always done in this feudalistic system that we're letting get out of control. And that's all I wanted to talk about. When I read articles like I seen in the Atlantic today about family segregation laws in America, blaming it on Trump's, like blaming Eichmann for the Jews getting slaughtered. It wasn't Eichmann. It wasn't Eichmann himself. Eichmann didn't do it all. It was the workers of iniquity between them, that 30,000, the 22 million Americans that buy into their government jobs, that stamp the papers, that send them along, that never question anything. That's what Hannah Arendt was saying in her book. She's saying there's hypocrisy in here, and I can't stand it. You can hang Eichmann, you can hang Trump, you can do anything you want and give you that token criminal. But it's not them. It's the workers of iniquity, the whole system, which stamps the stamps and sends it along, which takes children from their fathers, which takes children from immigration, which establishes prison systems for children. They're called foster care. So that's all I wanted to talk about today, and I wanted to make that pretty explicit, and I wanted to articulate that point to moron Americans that think it's all about the color of their skin, and rather than argue the actual points, they want to argue some just ridiculous argument out in left field that's off the actual topic. Yeah, that's what we do in the press. We argue off the field arguments because they're too uncomfortable to say the truth. And the truth is the family court system has always been barbaric to men. It's always been a system of slavery to men. Are you guys finally waking up to that? Or can't you take that leap of logic? The media is a bunch of morons, and most morons in this country are blue pill morons, and they have the basic IQ of goats. And that's where I wanted to end this. Thanks a lot for showing up, men, and thanks a lot for being Mgtow, and I hope you're having a great Saturday. And that's it. That's all I got to say today. Have a great day. Maybe I'll come back on later as soon as I get inflamed by something else I see. But until then, thanks for being Mgtow. Mgtow.